Go back, please. Can we go back? Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so subhanAllah, Unais al-Ghifari, you got to know something about him. Unais, he was a poet. Okay, and not only was he a poet, he was a next level poet. They used to have this thing called munafara back in the day. And munafara is when you challenge someone basically in your lineage, in your merits. You'll say, hey, by the way, I'm from this family, and we did this and this, and we are known for being generous, and we have the fastest camels, they do stuff like that. And you'd have the other party doing the same thing. And what they would do is, they would make a bet. There's munafara, the term is munafara. And whoever wins the bet gets whatever number of camels that the other side has. Let's say 40 camels, you put it in front of you, or not in front of you, but you place the bet on 40 camels, you win, you get 80 camels, right? So that's what Unais used to do, and he just won a munafara. The hadith starts off with him winning a munafara. And it's either said in prose, but rhythmic prose. Yeah? You guys can think of any other examples of rhythmic prose? Say what? One more time? Hip hop. Okay. Well, does hip hop fall under poetry or prose? Okay. So the Quran is actually rhythmic prose. It's a misconception. A lot of people think that the Quran is poetry or between two things, but no, it's actually rhythmic prose. And all literature, at least in Arabic, falls under either poetry and prose. So that's the first point. And they would go to a soothsayer, or they would go to someone who is known to be a critic of poetry. And they'd go to that person and they would say, please judge between us who is better between me and this person. And the judge, soothsayer sometimes, he would say, this person is better, give him your camels. And that's it. Sometimes, of course, it would lead to wars, right? Naturally. But that's how it was. So Unais was an accomplished munafir, and he was successful at what he did. And he was a very competitive person. Now, he had some work to do in Mecca, and at that time, he tells Abu Dhar, I'm going to go into Mecca, I have some stuff to do. He goes into Mecca, he hears the Prophet, peace be upon him, he hears the Quran, and this is what he says. He goes back to Abu Dhar, and he says, they say that he is a poet, or a soothsayer, or a magician. And I have heard the words of soothsayers, but his words aren't like theirs. I also compared his words to the type of poetry, but nobody can say that it is poetry. By Allah, he is truthful and they are liars. Yeah, this is interesting because he's a competitive guy. What you'd expect from Unais is to say, okay, he's claiming to be a prophet and he's come up with this rhythmic prose. I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to defeat him, and then I get to be a prophet or something. But no, he just says, this guy looks like he's truthful. And he can tell because he's someone who is of high level and a critic of poetry. Next slide, please. And yeah, of course, you cannot compare it to the speech of soothsayers because the speech of soothsayers isn't even eloquent. The speech of magicians, they're not really known for rhythmic prose or anything like that. And of course, obviously, the Quran cannot be compared to poetry in the sense of eloquence. So the question that comes up next is eloquence objective or subjective? What do you guys think? Let's see hands for objective. Is eloquence objective or subjective? How many people say objective? How many people say subjective? MashaAllah, 50-50 split. So the correct answer, based on Unais himself, is it's objective. Objective. If it wasn't objective, then why would he convert to Islam? If it wasn't objective, how can one say that the Quran is superior to any form of literature? It has to be an objective thing. And by the way, they saw this also applies to poetry. The classical critics of poetry, they would say this is good and this is bad. And of course we know this, yani. Even in taste, even when it comes to films. Imagine if everything was completely subjective, yeah? Would there be a best film? Or would it be, I like this? That's subjectivity, right? But la, there is best film. Best film because it has the best dialogue. Had really good acting, best acting, maybe. It had good blocking. It had good, what else? Screenplay, right? It had great music. Music's haram. But it had great music. So, therefore, even today, even in this postmodern world where everyone's saying everything's subjective, we kind of really do know that there is some objective criteria to things. And back then, yes, there is objectivity and they believed in this, and that's why they said this is great, and this is good, and this is bad, and this is better than this one, and they treated this like a science. And that's why you had people convert to Islam, man. People are accepting an afterlife. People are switching from polytheism to monotheism. People are saying, my father is in hell, my uncle is in hell, because they heard words that they could not compete with, and they sincerely believe that this is from a higher power. How do we prove the Quran's superiority? There's two ways. One is testimony, and one is experiencing the Quran. Testimony is by what I just said. It's the critics themselves, the top scholars of eloquence saying this is something that cannot be matched. When the top guys say this, we say, okay. We don't have to feel it ourselves. If the top guys say it, we accept it. And this applies to any field. When the experts agree to something, that's it. You don't have to experience it yourself. Even if you didn't watch the movie, you know it's the best film. They said it's the best film. Experiencing the Quran, that's the other way. Now this is something, of course, that takes a lot of work, because you got to study this stuff. You got to learn Dalal al-Ijaz. You got to see the application in the Kitab al-Kashaf by Zamakhshari. And there are works that are written by classical scholars that teach you about eloquence and how to apply it, and how to look into it, and how to judge it for yourself. Next slide, please. So yeah, once again, the whole society changed from polytheistic to monotheistic in a very short amount of time. In a couple of years, a few years. The Bedouins, they became city dwellers. These Ghifar, they're living in the deserts, yani. They shifted, they became city dwellers. They used to raid. Now it's haram to raid. We can't raid people anymore. They didn't used to observe sacred months. Now they observe sacred months. And the whole tribe converted to Islam. Not only them, but their sister tribe, or not sister tribe, their allies, the tribe of Aslam, also converted to Islam. Ajib, huh? It's just from listening to these words. SubhanAllah. Next slide, please. Oh, Al-Aws al-Khazraj. SubhanAllah. There's so much to say about this. The more you get into the history of Medina, the more you appreciate the conversion of the Aws and the Khazraj. For about 150 years, they fought one another. 150 years, these two tribes. By the way, they're like related. Al-Aws al-Khazraj, they're brothers. They were in Yemen. They moved to this area of Yathrib. It initially started with Malik bin Ajlan fighting a tribe of Jews, or bringing in bringing in Arab armies from the north in the Sham, bringing them towards Yathrib and killing some of the Jews there. And then they became the strongest power, win for the Khazraj. You got the Battle of Sumayr, you got the war of Ka'b bin Amr, the war of Hatib, in which the Khazraj win, and the war of Bu'ath. And I would love to go into the details, Let me just share one. I just want to give you an idea of how silly the wars are. Okay? Ka'b bin Amr, I believe, he was a guest. No, he wasn't a guest, excuse me. Ka'b bin Amr was from the Khazraj, if I recall correctly. And he had a guest. His guest, I'm sorry guys, it's Hatib, I'm confusing battles. Hatib was from the Khazraj. He has a guest. His guest visits him, stays at his place, is enjoying the hospitality. One day, he's in the marketplace. Someone from the opposing tribe, he wants to humiliate the host. He doesn't want to humiliate the guest, but he wants to humiliate the host. So he wants to mess with the guest in order to humiliate the host. So he grabs a Jewish friend of his, and he says to him, I will give you my cloak if you spank this guy in the middle of the marketplace. Literally spank him. Okay? So I know it's weird. So he goes up to, his Jewish friend, I love how the report starts off. He doesn't go spank the guy and then take the cloak. La, he takes the cloak. Khalas, it's as good as done. He goes up to him, spanks him in the middle of the marketplace. It was so loud the whole marketplace heard. And the guy, the guest, he started shouting in the streets, saying, Ya Hatib, I have been humiliated, Ya Hatib. And Hatib comes running, and he's like, who humiliated you? That guy. Hatib kills the guy on the spot. And naturally, this leads to a war. These wars, by the way, like Battle of Sumer or the War of Sumer is 20 years. These little things, they caused years and decades of warfare. So there's so much bad blood between Al-Aws and Khazraj that it seemed like there's absolutely no way of solving the issues between the two tribes. But subhanAllah, they converted to Islam and they made peace. What specifically happened? Why did these two warring tribes convert to Islam and make peace with one another? Next slide, please. So remember, Medina is split. Yathrib is split into two categories. Al-Aws al-Khazraj on one side, or excuse me, Al-Aws al-Khazraj, and then you have the three Jewish tribes. Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza, they were with the Aws, they were allied with the Aws. And it seemed like, Wallahu a'lam, that all the Jews hated the Khazraj, because the Khazraj were the initial aggressors against the Jews. And the Jews, they would continuously threaten the Khazraj and tell them that there's a prophet, he's going to come, and they're making dua for this prophet to come, and when he comes, we're going to wipe you out. It's ajib. Next slide, please. So this is confirmed in the Quran. We have in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 89, that the Jews were telling this to the Arabs, they were telling this to the Khazraj. And you have second generation scholars like Ata, Abu al-Aliya, Qatada, they all confirm that the Jews were threatening the Arabs about a prophet that will soon appear. Next slide, please. More confirmation. By the way, folks, because I have to bring sources. I have to quote this stuff for you guys. I have to tell you. When I make these claims, I don't want you to just accept it. And I see people quoting narrations. No one's calling them out. You got to call me out if I quote a narration. All right? Ibn Hisham quotes Salama bin Salama that a Jew came to the sons of Abdul Ashhal and said, a prophet is coming from there, from over there. Asim bin Umar bin Qatada confirms from his relatives from the Khazraj, or excuse me, yeah, actually he is quoting from the Khazraj, that, O people, by Allah, this is the prophet that the Jews were threatening you with, subhanallah. When the Khazraj met with the prophet, peace be upon him, and they sat down with him, and they heard what he had to say, and they heard the Quran, they said, this is the Jews, they were telling us that he's going to join them And then they said, don't let them beat you to him. Let's accept him first, before the Jews accept him. Next slide, please. Aywa, so one strange thought, one question that comes to mind is, how did they know? How did the Jews know that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is coming in the first place? From their book, but where specifically? That's it. Who told you?
Isaiah 42.
That's correct. So we have in Isaiah 42 multiple verses about the people rejoicing and about something about a new song. I had this idea that at this place, at the people of Kedar, it's referring to the Arabs, and let the people of Salʻ sing for joy. Salʻ, the Jabal Salʻ in Yathrib, still exists today. You can go to Jabal Salʻ, of course. Yeah, and it's Arabized, of course. Salʻ, it's Arabized. But please, next slide. We have the significance of a Salʻ. The Jews, they used to bury their dead in a Salʻ. If you notice in the image in the bottom right corner, these are the places that they lived in. They lived towards the south of Medina, and the Salʻ, as you can see, is like right in the middle. They used to bury their dead over there, which is strange. It's a bit far away. I think it's about 2 hours away. Like, why wouldn't they bury their dead closer? So it was a place that was known to be a significant place for them. And this was during the time of Uthman. We have a report, and we have this report even like about 100 years later. This was known to be the grave of the Jews. And Tabari narrates these reports. Please carry on. Have you guys come across this before? The assumption of Moses? So now we've established place, but how did they know when this prophet was supposed to come? So this prophecy, it's printed in multiple prints, multiple editions. The assumption of Moses is very accessible online, and it speaks of the Lord coming, or rather a representative of the Lord coming. And this will be at CCL, meaning 250. Very simple calculation. CCL, Roman numerals for 250. The word times, that he will come in 250 times. Times here refers to something called the year week, meaning 7 years. Simple math. 250 by 7 is 1,750 years. If you add on to that, by the way, this is referring to the time after Musa alayhi salam. So in the report, in the prophecy, Musa alayhi salam is speaking about a prophet that's going to come at the end of times. If you add 40 years around that time, which is the amount of time that Musa alayhi salam is in the desert, and you calculate this is BC. Now we don't know when Musa alayhi salam passed away, right? We got no idea. But the most common view is that Ramses II is the Pharaoh of Moses. According to what we know about his death, which is 213 BC, if you add the 40 years of Musa being in the desert, and you add the number in the prophecy, 1,750, it comes out at 577 after, or CE in the Common Era, which is around the time of Rasulullah. So it's due to that they had an idea of the time, and due to that they had an idea of the place. Now, am I certain that these are the reasons that they would warn the Khazraj, or they would tell the Khazraj a prophet's going to come soon? We can only speculate. But again, here, as you can see, there is evidence in a classical, it's a non-canonical text. I'm not saying it's a canonical text. However, even like the book of Jude, quotes the assumption of Moses, so it does have some weight. Next, please. And this is an interesting one, because Rasulullah had no idea about the Jews warning the Khazraj. He had no idea that they were expecting a prophet. Because someone can say, yeah, he claimed to be a prophet because the Jews were threatening the Khazraj, they mentioned the prophet coming. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, spent about 13 years in Mecca. And he went to different places he went to Ta'if in order to convert them to Islam. Why didn't he go to Yathrib? Why didn't he go directly to Medina? We have this narration, Sahih Bukhari, in which he says he has a dream, and in the dream he thinks that he's going to Yamama, but instead he realizes later on the prophecy, or excuse me, not the prophecy, but his dream is fulfilled when he goes to Yathrib. Next slide, please. So what are the results, ya jama'ah? Folks, what are the results? You have the conversion of two tribes that fought for 150 years. Man, it was crazy. It was crazy. It got so bad that, like, initially, when they went to war, and when you have a group that's winning, the other tribe would hide in their houses. And the first group, the winning group, they'd stop. Okay, you guys are hiding in your houses? Okay, we're not gonna fight anymore. You guys go into your neighborhoods? Okay, we're done. It got so bad, slightly before Islam, the intention was to obliterate, annihilate every single person from the opposing tribe. It got worse. Rasulullah ﷺ created peace between both tribes. What did they do? They have appointed him the leader. Imagine, you got Aus, Khazraj, you got the Jews here. It's a complete mess of a situation, and they put an outsider as their leader. Subhanallah. This is the creation of the first Islamic nation. And the Jewish tribes themselves, they rejected, subhanAllah. Even though they were telling the Khazraj that a prophet's about to come, and then they rejected him. However, we have some scholars like Abdullah bin Salam and Mukhayriq, they convert to Islam. And we have Abdullah bin Salam, by the way, quoting Isaiah 42. When he's asked about Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his description, he quotes Isaiah 42. Next, please. Oh, and this is the final one, inshallah, folks. About to end this. I hope you guys are enjoying this one. Barakallahu feekum. The masses, the conversion of the masses, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم. The Romans were defeated, and in the nearby land, and after their defeat, in a few years, they'll be victorious. طيب. Next slide. You cannot appreciate this prophecy if you don't know what's going on in history. Because when people say the Romans and the Persians, some people think Brazil versus Germany. You say, yeah, Brazil won. What was Germany 8-1? 7-1? MashaAllah, ya respect, ya akhi. Germany 7-1, and then, by the way, so Brazil won the next one. How much was the next one? It was like 2-0 or something. It's not a big win, but they got them back. But Habibi, the first win is not like, it's not a proper analogy, because that's one game. This is a different game. When an army is losing a war, you can't compare it to a football game. When an army is losing a war, they're losing their cities, they're losing their troops. You cannot compare it to a football game. I'm just bringing this up because some people say, yeah, بعض الحمقى والسفهاء, they compare this to a football game. In the year 610, Heraclius comes into power. He doesn't have support because Heraclius kills the previous emperor. So a lot of his men are actually loyal to the previous emperor focus. In 1 year, the fall of Caesarea. Shortly after that, the fall of Damascus. Heraclius attempts diplomacy. Diplomacy is rejected. He's trying to, يعني شوف, when you lose, imagine the Romans lose Damascus, they don't try to win Damascus back. Okay, we're just gonna send a letter to Khusro, the emperor, we want peace now. Imagine that, man. Like, imagine someone takes over your land. I want peace, bro. That's how bad it was. In the next year, the fall of Jerusalem, Palestine, Jordan, the year after that, Egypt, Ethiopia, Alexandria, the Roman Empire is collapsing. In a few years, it's completely collapsing. Famine, they're dealing with a plague. Heraclius, because he's so, he loses all hope, he attempts to escape. Can you imagine? The emperor has lost hope in his people that he wants to escape his city and move to Carthage in Tunisia, in modern day Tunisia. That's how bad the situation was. He fills his ship with like gold and silver and gems and whatever, and the ship sails towards Carthage, and miraculously it sinks down to the sea. Like, there's a storm and he loses everything. And ironically, like after that, the people find out that Heraclius wanted to escape. So like the head priest, he brings them into the church. Heraclius, Habibi, Yakhi, you cannot do this, man. You cannot ditch your people. And Heraclius is like, okay, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stick around with you guys. The next year, the fall of Carthage. One more time, he tries to make diplomacy with the Persians, fails. He tries to make diplomacy with the Avars, because by the way, they're not only fighting one war, the Romans are fighting two wars at the same time. They're fighting a war to the east, they're fighting a war to the west. And the Avars, they're like they're a group of like Euro-Asian barbarians, and they're not able to deal with the barbarians, let alone the Persian Empire. Can you imagine? And the fall of Ankara in the year 619. So yeah, it's done. It's almost done. The Roman Empire was about to fall completely. Next slide, please. Check it out. Look at the difference. This is what Focus had. It's split when it comes to the size of the territory. In a very short amount of time, they lost all that land. And by the way, like, they couldn't seek support from Rome or anything like that, because they had their own troubles over there. So, like, it was mainly Constantinople. That's all that's the main city they had, and they're barely surviving. Next slide, please. And a few, like, some minor cities in Greece. So in the year 621, ما أدري صار فيني يا أخي مرة واحدة قلبت. In the year 621, we have the prophecy. The Romans were defeated, and in a few years they will be victorious. But the opposite. So if you're going to make a prophecy, the prophecy that you would be making is the Romans are going to cease to exist. That's the prophecy you'd be making. Or the Romans are going to survive. La. The prophecy is the Romans are going to defeat the Persians. Kif. How is this possible? That's the first point. And let's make this even harder. Time limit. If this did not occur, Islam is done. False prophecy, and la, it's being recited in the Quran. Next slide, please. So it's not like the Prophet, peace be upon him, whispered to some of his companions. This is it was a public announcement in Mecca that's recited and memorized and repeated again and again. In the year 626, you have the siege of Constantinople. You have two great armies marching in on Constantinople. That's how bad it got. Like, the capital itself was surrounded. And the prophecy, of course, is questioned. They survive. Actually, Heraclius has the army split into three. third is in Constantinople. He takes a third, and I think like he gives his cousin or brother another third to defend some areas. But Heraclius actually goes on the attack in 626. Next, please. And the way it's done, the way Heraclius is able to succeed is crazy in itself. In the year 628. What happens is Heraclius, he meets up with some other barbarians that lived around Armenia, and he allies with them, and he tells them, let's go kill the Persians, let's go defeat the Persians. And he wins the heart of the head of the Turkic tribe by showing him a portrait of his daughter. I'm going to hook you up with my daughter. You help me out with some troops. So his army expands in size. At the same time, Khusro, the commander, or excuse me, not the commander, the emperor of the Persians, sends, he's very upset with his main commander, Shahrbaraz. Shahrbaraz is trying to invade Constantinople. He's unable. Khusro is trying to force him to invade and force him to victory, and Shahrbaraz is just simply unable to. So he sends someone to kill Shahrbaraz. And that person refuses to kill Shahrbaraz. He's an old friend. Shahrbaraz, the commander, is then told by Khusro, I want you to kill the other commander. And what happens, the first commander tells Shahrbaraz, by the way, I was supposed to kill you. You've been given this to kill me. I'm the one who's supposed to kill you. And then basically Shahrbaraz, the main commander himself, decides to withdraw from the battle. So you have the main Persian army withdrawing from the battle, which allows Heraclius to go into Persian land and to conquer and to destroy. And the people of Persia, they freak out and they basically toss Khusro into his treasury, and his son himself is the killer of Khusro. At the same time, you have the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and that's the time of the fulfillment of the prophecy. You can find these reports in Tafsir al-Tabari through Sha'bi, Qatada, and Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah bin Mas'ud. And this occurs in 7 years. You find this in the report of Niyar bin Mukram, and Sunan al-Tirmidhi, and Ubaydullah, and Qatada, and Tafsir al-Tabari. Next, please. So the Byzantines win the war and they retain their land. The prophecy comes to pass. And Niyar bin Mukram, when this happens, and this is the most important thing, he says, when that occurred, many people came to Islam. Sunan Tirmidhi, authentic hadith. This is the reason you have a lot of companions converting to Islam, because of how unlikely this prophecy was. Edward Gibbon, who wrote the famous The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, says that at the time when the prophecy is said, or the prediction is said to have been delivered, no prophecy could be more distant from its accomplishment. That's how unlikely it was. There's a good reason for conversion. Next slide, please. So this, ya jama'ah, this is the reason why you had these tribes convert, and this is the reason why you have these spikes, and this is the reason why you have all these people coming into Islam. And the Zuhri comments, he says, Zuhri, of course, a tabi'i, one of the a'imma of the tabi'in, he says, war is the only time people met. So when truce occurred and war ceased and people felt safe among one another, they met and spoke, negotiated in speech, and disputed one another. And so anyone with a mind that was spoken to about Islam entered it. In those 2 years, double as many or more than double as many entered Islam as ever before. Next slide, please. Barakallah feekum, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this. You can use this. You can use these points when giving da'wah. Simple stuff. Go up to any non-Muslim and bring up the prophecy of the Romans. Share these details with them. They're not going to have much that they can say. When I tried it, they'd say things like, yeah, maybe it's a coincidence. But why would Rasulullah ﷺ even make a prophecy like that? What's the point? It's so, the chances of it failing are so much higher than it succeeding. I open the floor to any questions.
Was there a word in which
I'm not familiar with the verses that Unais heard. I can't recall anything about that specifically. Abdullah bin Salam. He was Jewish. Yeah.
Two prophecies like this that cause people to convert to Islam.
Yep.
What you say today that prophecies like this are the main reasons for people to convert.
One more time?
Prophecies like this is what make people convert more to Islam.
Yeah.
For today,
Yeah.
would you say that's the main reason why people can convert, or meanings about
I see that many, so the brother's asking about prophecies and that affecting people's, or that causing people to convert to Islam, and is this the main reason why people convert today? From my experience, most people seem to convert due to the simple message of Tawheed and monotheism, and how simple and direct it is, and how it's something intrinsic within us. And definitely it's something that should always be pushed, and it should be one of the main, or if not the main, the message that we bring across to the people, because at the end of the day, La ilaha illallah. That's number one. But prophecies help, man. It helps. And what I would do is, anyone from any other religion, you say, Tayyib, can you provide a prophecy yourself? Why do you believe in your religion? If they have a prophecy that they believe in, you bring this up. You say, isn't this a clearer prophecy? Isn't this a better prophecy? If you believe in your religion for your prophecies, what about this one? It's a few years, so it's 3 to 9. Yeah. Yeah, it's not. How is it a lot of time? Oh, so you're saying it's not too specific, right? Yeah. So the brother is asking us a very good question. Why wasn't the prophecy more specific? Why didn't the prophecy say the 15th of July in the year 628? It's better, yeah? But if that happens, ya akhi, if that happens, then there's no test. If that happens, there's no test. And as I was saying a couple of days ago, there's this quote by Najmuddin al-Tufi in which he says, when signs are shown, there's still a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have shown signs that are absolutely undeniable to the point that it's no longer a test. So yes, 3 to 9 years is a wider range, but if it was too specific, then so people saying coincidence, it's a bad cope. It's a bad cope, but it's a cope nonetheless. Go ahead. Yep.
Do you think it was also not too specific, because if it was that specific, it would be like an easy preparation for the enemies for their defense? In that sense?
I don't think they cared much about what the Arabs were saying all the way down there in the south. Wallahu a'lam. Go ahead.
Assalamu
alaikum.
I was just wondering, like, because of the power of prophecy, are there any prophecies that are unfulfilled that come to mind, like prior to the time of Imam Mahdi, that if it were to come true, that he would seem like very influential, that would influence a lot of people to see that as true?
Something very, very, very specific.
Or like, are any prophecy that's
It's many. There are many that did come true, and what's really interesting about prophecies is prophecies are always relevant to their specific time and the time in which they come true. So when you had Burj Khalifa, the moment that was ready, or the moment that was done, the moment people realized that, to us, to my generation, 20 years ago, when we saw this, it was like the biggest, clearest thing. And I'm like thinking, subhanAllah, Yawm al-Qiyamah is tomorrow. That's how I felt. To them, the Sahaba, by the way, this is actually, subhanAllah, the prophecy about the Romans is a lot, it's a high-risk prophecy, as opposed to prophecies about the future. Because prophecies about the future don't necessarily affect the person making the prophecy. So imagine I claim to be someone that has knowledge of the future, and I say things like, in the year 2060, the grandson of Trump is going to become the Khalifa of the Ummah or something. And like, if I say that, it's going to sound weird, but apart from that, it doesn't affect me, because it's in the year 2060, and I don't know if I'm going to be alive for that long, right? But specifying a time, a few years, Rasulullah ﷺ is most likely going to be alive for a few years, and he is alive for a few years. So it's a high-risk prophecy. If it fails, his whole mission fails. And that's why when you find false prophets making prophecies, they're really low risk. The best example that comes to mind is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. When Mirza Ghulam Ahmad makes a prophecy, he says, I am a prophet, and if I am not, then I will die before you. If you die before me, then I'm a prophet. So let's say 50-50, yeah? Let's say 50-50. The person dies, you see, I'm a prophet. If Mirza Ghulam Ahmad dies, he doesn't care, man. Wallah, probably didn't even believe in God, ya akhi. So it doesn't matter to him, he's dead. So it's low-risk prophecy. And to subhanAllah, like the few occasions, subhanAllah, the few occasions where he makes prophecies that are limited, they fail, man. That is crazy, but subhanAllah. But it's low, he usually does low-risk prophecies. Alaikum salam, bro.
Are there any sources outside of Islam that validate the moon signing? And if not, how do we validate it?
In regards to non-Islamic sources, I'm not familiar with any. Validating it is through the narrations in the hadith compilations, and of course in the Quran. Alaikum salam.
So, what was the initial reason that the House and Khazraj embraced Islam?
I said that about 20 minutes ago. It's hard to repeat, akhi.
Oh, sorry, I guess I missed it.
Yeah. You can watch the stream, inshallah. Yeah, it's all good.
So let's say you give Dawa to an atheist,
Yeah.
and you try to explain to them, you give them like 5 different prophecies that came to pass, that are racist to them. And like how you mentioned, those who cope with mechanism, they'll say, oh, coincidence, or they'll say, well, every religion's prophecy, 1 or 2 probably came true.
Say again?
Like after giving them a prophecy from Islam,
Yeah.
it's COVID mechanism.
Yeah.
Either they'll say it's coincidence, or they'll say, oh, every religion has prophecies, some of them might come true, some of them might not. So it's also special laws.
That-
You like break that barrier to realize like these kind of prophecies are not normal, that this is unique, that you should actually break the barrier, prevent them from COVID.
Okay, well, was that clear, guys? You guys hear that? So this is a very important question, and I would say that when an atheist says, well, many religions have this, that's just a claim. La, many religions don't have this. And if you look into these claims, you'll always find some sort of issue. And they don't believe this, man. When they say, yeah, other religions have miracles, nah, they don't believe in the supernatural. Atheists don't believe in the supernatural. they're just saying this just to shut down your point. They're trying to say, okay, well, this is correct and that's correct. It can't be. And kind of like an analysis paralysis kind of thing. But we got to drop everything. But no, that's not a sincere point. And if an atheist believed in all religions or multiple religions having correct prophecies and miracles, then one, they would believe in the supernatural, and two, they would actually be looking into these religions, and the antagonistic atheists usually don't. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not too well versed with Christian and Jewish prophecies, but personally that's not an issue because we do affirm that some of the content of the Bible is correct. So when there are prophecies that do come true, we're like, yeah, okay, we're cool with that, alhamdulillah. But in regards to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, there is a prophecy that he made about someone he debated with. And his name, I believe, is Abdullah Athem, if I recall correctly. And he states that he's going to die in a specific time period, and that man actually outlives that period. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said, that guy, he made tawbah. He made tawbah, so he didn't die. So the guy was like, I didn't make tawbah. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said, yes, you did. You're lying. So it's terrible. It's like, there's this really, really, really amazing video by Hani Tahir, who's an ex-Qadiani, who actually makes a video about the prophecies, the failed prophecies of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, and he doesn't direct it to Qadianis, he directs it to atheists. Can you imagine? And he says, imagine this, there's a man who's claiming to be sent by God. Every time he makes a prophecy, the opposite happens. It fails clearly, it blows up in his face. This has to be proof of God's existence. It's a crazy video. One example, he says, my son is going to be the Mahdi. Boom, he dies. Yeah, what are the odds of that happening? What are the odds? And then he's like, no, I meant my other son. Boom, he dies. And then he stays silent. He doesn't say anything about the third son, because, and the third son, when he grows up, I'm the Mahdi. Yeah, everything's the opposite. Proof of God. God. Yeah.
If it's only found in our sources, can say, well, of course you're going to have a bias that you validated in your sources.
Yeah.
But why am I supposed to trust that?
I don't even use that argument much. I personally don't push for. I believe in it. I believe in the night journey. There are many miracles that I believe in, though I don't feel they're easy to argue. And there are many arguments that are a lot easier to argue, so I push for those. But I appreciate the pushback. Say again? Yeah, I don't believe that. Okay. Yeah, nah, I don't believe that. From my research, I looked into it. I don't believe that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a relative timing in regards to when the letters were sent by the prophet to Muhammad in perspective to when his prophecy was stated?
Say again, the letters?
I think is there a thing about letters being sent to the leaders of both the church and the Romans? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It would be. I'm not sure. I can't say.
Earlier you mentioned that eloquence was like effective.
Yeah. Okay, so the works of there are some classical works like Al-Asma'i's, I think it's called Fuhulat al-Shu'ara, where you'll find him speaking about poetry in a way that indicates that it's not subjective. It's something I'd recommend checking out. But yeah, it's before Al-Hudaybiyah. It would naturally be, the writing of the letters would naturally be before Hudaybiyah because Khusro is still alive. So maybe the 5th year after Hijrah, maybe the 4th year, Wallahu alam. Anyone else? We're good? Alhamdulillah, barakallah fikum, jazakumullah khairan. I enjoyed this. I hope you guys did as well, and I hope you guys use this stuff. Barakallah fikum.